Timely silence. The key to maintaining family harmony. Have you ever shared a deeply personal story only to realize later that you may have said too much? As we grow older, we begin to understand that not everything needs to be shared, even with those closest to us. Timely silence is not about secrecy or dishonesty. Rather, it is a way to preserve inner peace and maintain respect within the family. There are certain things that, when kept to ourselves, can help us avoid misunderstandings, reduce emotional burdens on our children and grandchildren, and create a more harmonious family dynamic. In today's world, where sharing emotions and personal experiences has become effortless, especially on social media, many people forget that some things are better left unsaid. It is not because we want to hide our true selves, but because certain truths can unintentionally cause hurt or change the way others perceive us. For example, when we share major past mistakes, our intention might be to teach a valuable lesson, but what we receive in return could be pity or judgment from our loved ones. When we frequently talk about minor health concerns, we might unknowingly cause our children to worry excessively, making them see us as a burden rather than the strong individuals we still are. In today's video, we will explore 5 important things that older adults should keep private to protect family harmony, avoid unnecessary misunderstandings, and maintain respect from younger generations. The real-life stories of Mr. Andy, a small garage owner, Mrs. Amanda, a retired doctor, Mr. Robert, a janitor with unfulfilled dreams, Mrs. Anna, a supermarket employee, and Mr. Tony, a wealthy businessman, will illustrate why sometimes silence is the wisest choice. Let's reflect on these valuable lessons together and discover how we can protect the peace within our families. If you find this content meaningful, please like and subscribe to the Inspiration Elders channel to receive more insightful life lessons. Keeping silent. About major past mistakes. A lesson from Mr. Andy. As we grow older, there is a natural desire to share our experiences, successes, and even our mistakes with our children and grandchildren. We hope that by telling them about our missteps, they will learn valuable lessons and avoid making the same errors. However, not every story about past mistakes has the positive impact we expect. Sometimes revealing too much about our failures does not help others learn, but instead alters how they perceive us. This can not only affect our image in their eyes, but may also make them worry, lose confidence in us, or even question our abilities. Let's look at the story of Mr. Andy, a small auto repair shop owner who spent his life building his business from the ground up. When he was young, he was passionate about entrepreneurship and once decided to open a new branch in hopes of expanding his operations. However, after trusting the wrong business partner, he made a poor investment that led to a major financial loss. The money he lost took him years to recover, and he had to work hard to stabilize his business again. For him, this failure was a crucial lesson about being cautious in business and carefully choosing the right partners. One evening at a family dinner, his son, a young man eager to start his own business, asked him for advice. Thinking this was a great opportunity to pass on his wisdom, Mr. Andy told him the full story of his financial failure, hoping that his son would learn the importance of caution and patience in making business decisions. However, the reaction was not what he expected. He noticed a change in his son's expression. Previously, his son saw him as a strong, successful, and trustworthy man, but after hearing the story, there was hesitation and concern in his eyes. His son no longer asked him for business advice as frequently as before, and even started seeking guidance from others instead. Over time, Mr. Andy realized that sharing his failure did not benefit his son. Instead of learning a lesson, his son began to doubt his father's abilities. Even though Mr. Andy had overcome the setback and rebuilt his business, His past mistake overshadowed his later successes in his son's mind. From that moment on, Mr. Andy changed how he conveyed his lessons. Instead of talking about specific failures, he simply emphasized the core values he had learned. In business, the most important thing is choosing the right people to trust and never rushing into investments without understanding the risks. He understood that a lesson could be passed down in the form of principles and wisdom, rather than detailed accounts of personal failures. The lesson from Mr. Andy. Mr. Andy's story teaches us that not every mistake from our past needs to be shared. When we reveal too many details about our failures, we may unintentionally diminish our value in the eyes of our children and grandchildren. Instead of learning from our experiences, they may begin to see us differently, perhaps with pity or worry rather than respect. Rather than recounting every failure, we can pass on the lessons we've learned without dwelling on the painful details. Keeping major mistakes to ourselves is not about hiding our past, but about protecting our peace of mind and the way our family perceives us. Let them see us as strong individuals who overcame challenges with perseverance and resilience, rather than as people defined by past mistakes. When our children and grandchildren see the strength in who we are today, they will learn from our example in the present, rather than focusing on the missteps of our past. So before sharing a story about your mistakes, ask yourself, will this truly help, or will it change how my family sees me? Choose wisely what to share, because some lessons hold more value when kept as personal wisdom rather than told as a cautionary tale. Keeping silent about minor health issues. A lesson from Mrs. Amanda. After realizing that not every past mistake needs to be shared, we should also reflect on another important aspect of life: our health. As we age, our bodies change, aches and pains become more frequent. Sleep is no longer as deep, and sometimes we feel fatigued without a clear reason. These are natural parts of growing older. However, if we constantly talk about these minor health issues with our children and grandchildren, we may unintentionally become a source of worry in their eyes, rather than the strong and independent person we still strive to be. Let's look at the story of Mrs. Amanda, a retired doctor who spent her life caring for the health of others. She understood better than anyone that aging comes with inevitable physical changes. After retirement, she began noticing mild knee pain, occasional sleepless nights, and fatigue when the weather changed. However, she wasn't overly concerned, knowing these were just normal signs of aging. But one day, while chatting with her daughter, she casually mentioned that her knees had been bothering her more than usual when walking. Immediately, her daughter became overly worried. She searched online for information about arthritis, suggested various supplements, and even insisted that Mrs. Amanda visit a specialist right away. While Mrs. Amanda appreciated her daughter's concern, she found the reaction overwhelming. Her knee pain wasn't severe enough to require medical intervention, and she didn't want their conversations to constantly revolve around her health. Soon she noticed a small but clear shift in how her daughter treated her. Previously, they would talk about life, books, and happy family memories. But now, every conversation seemed to focus on her knees, her sleep, or her blood pressure. Gradually, Mrs. Amanda began feeling like she was being treated as a patient rather than a mother. Her daughter's excessive concern made her realize that if she continued sharing every small health issue, her children would stop seeing her as an independent woman and instead view her as a fragile elder in need of constant care. Recognizing this, Mrs. Amanda decided to make a change. Instead of mentioning her knee pain, she started talking about the enjoyable moments in her daily life. When her daughter asked about her health, she simply smiled and said, "I'm doing fine. I walked for over 30 minutes today." She focused on what she could do rather than what was troubling her body. When necessary, she still attended regular checkups and took care of herself, but she stopped sharing minor health concerns with her children. The lesson from Mrs. Amanda. Mrs. Amanda's story teaches us that sometimes keeping silent about minor health issues not only protects us, but also spares our loved ones from unnecessary worry. When we frequently talk about illness, we may unintentionally create an atmosphere of concern and stress within the family, making our children feel obligated to constantly worry about us, rather than simply enjoying time together. This does not mean we should ignore our health or hide serious medical concerns. When there are significant symptoms, seeking medical attention is essential. However, for minor aches, occasional sleepless nights, or non-serious issues, it is often better to keep them to ourselves and continue living life fully. Just as Mr. Andy learned to share lessons from his failures without reliving painful details, Mrs. Amanda also realized that by focusing on the positive rather than dwelling on illness, she could maintain the image of a strong and independent mother in her children's eyes. This is the power of timely silence, helping us preserve our dignity, maintain respect, and ensure that the time we spend with family is filled with joy rather than unnecessary worries. Keeping silent about unfulfilled dreams. A lesson from Mr. Robert. After realizing that not every past mistake needs to be shared and that minor health concerns should not be overly discussed, there is another aspect we should consider keeping to ourselves: unfulfilled dreams. As we reach a certain age, we not only reflect on what we have achieved, but also on the things we were unable to accomplish. Sometimes we feel the urge to share these unfinished dreams with our children and grandchildren, believing that they might inspire them. However, reality often tells a different story. Unfulfilled dreams can sometimes evoke feelings of regret, pity, or even create an invisible distance between us and our loved ones. Let's take a look at the story of Mr. Robert, a janitor who dedicated his life to working hard and providing for his family. When he was young, he dreamed of opening a small grocery store where he could manage his own business and build a space for familiar customers to visit daily, chat, and form a close-knit community. However, life took him in a different direction. When he started a family, the financial burden of supporting his children prevented him from taking the risk of starting a business. Instead, he chose the stability of working as a school janitor to ensure a secure future for his children. Many years passed, and although he never got to open his grocery store, he still found joy in his family and the simple moments of life. One day, while talking to his grandson, a boy with a passion for business, Mr. Robert casually mentioned his old dream. He shared his past plans with excitement, reminiscing about the ideas and aspirations he once had. But as he looked into his grandson's eyes, he saw something unexpected, a look of sadness and regret. Instead of feeling inspired, his grandson felt a sense of guilt and pity for him. The boy said, "Grandpa, so you never got to achieve your dream? I wish you had been able to do it." Though the words came from love and compassion, they made Mr. Robert realize something important. When we share our unfulfilled dreams, others may not understand our true emotions. They may feel sadness for us or even guilt, thinking that our life is incomplete. After that moment, Mr. Robert reflected deeply on his past. He realized that, even though he never achieved his dream of owning a grocery store, his life was still full of meaning. He had raised his children well, built lasting friendships, and cherished many wonderful memories. If he continued to talk about what he hadn't accomplished, he might unintentionally make his loved ones believe that his life was defined by regret rather than appreciation for all that he had achieved. From then on, he chose to focus on the things he had accomplished, rather than the dreams that remained unfulfilled. When his grandson asked him about business, he no longer talked about the grocery store he never had. Instead, he shared lessons on patience, hard work, and finding joy in the work he did. He told stories about his experiences as a janitor, how he met different people, helped students, and was appreciated by those around him. The lesson from Mr. Robert: not every unfulfilled dream needs to be shared. When we talk about things we never got to do, others may feel regret or sadness for us rather than learning from our experiences. But when we focus on the values we have created in our lives, we show them that success is not only measured by the goals we achieve, but also by how fully we live with what we have. Just as Mr. Andy shared his lessons without dwelling on past failures, Mrs. Amanda chose to keep her minor health concerns private to avoid worrying her family, and Mrs. Anna learned to accept her children's choices without imposing her expectations. Mr. Robert realized that keeping his unfulfilled dreams to himself allowed him to protect his image in his family's eyes. Instead of leaving behind memories of things left undone, he could leave behind a strong image of a man who lived a full and meaningful life, regardless of what he had or hadn't accomplished. So, if you have unfulfilled dreams, cherish them as private memories, a beautiful part of your journey that doesn't always need to be shared. Because sometimes, silence not only preserves our inner peace, but also teaches our loved ones to appreciate the present, rather than dwelling on what was never achieved. Keeping silent about disappointment or dissatisfaction with family. A lesson from Mrs. Anna: after understanding that not every past mistake, minor health issue, or unfulfilled dream needs to be shared, we now explore another equally important aspect: how we express disappointment or dissatisfaction with our loved ones. Every one of us has expectations for our children and grandchildren, hoping they will have a stable and successful life. But when their lives take a different path than we envisioned, does expressing disappointment truly help, or does it only create distance between us and our family? Let's look at the story of Mrs. Anna, a retired supermarket employee who always wished for her daughter to have a stable and secure career. When she was younger, Mrs. Anna worked tirelessly to provide for her child, believing that a well-paying job with good benefits would ensure a secure future. She hoped her daughter would work for a large company in a stable office job, but instead, her daughter chose to pursue photography, a field full of risks and uncertain income. The first time her daughter shared her dream, Mrs. Anna couldn't hide her concern. One evening during dinner, she said, "I just want you to have a stable life. Taking pictures is fun, but what if no one hires you? How will you support your family?" These words came from a place of love and protection, but she didn't realize they would make her daughter feel hurt. Her daughter looked at her with sadness, as if all her hard work and passion had never been acknowledged. After that conversation, Mrs. Anna noticed her daughter becoming more distant. She used to eagerly share her new projects and the photos she had taken, but now she was more reserved, hesitant to open up. Mrs. Anna soon realized that her advice did not change her daughter's decision. It only created a gap between them. She spent a lot of time reflecting on this. She remembered her own youth, how she once had dreams of her own but had to set them aside due to circumstances. She realized that her daughter also had the right to follow her own path, and the best thing she could do was not to change her, but to support her in finding her way. From that moment on, Mrs. Anna decided to take a different approach. Instead of expressing disappointment or trying to persuade her daughter to give up photography, she chose to remain silent when she had negative thoughts and focused on the positive. When her daughter spoke about a new photography project, she no longer asked, "Is this job secure?" Instead, she smiled and said, "I'm happy that you're doing what you love." Over time, she noticed a change. Her daughter became more comfortable sharing her experiences. She even started opening up about the challenges in her career, and sometimes asked for advice on financial management. The lesson from Mrs. Anna's story shows that we don't always need to express our disappointment or dissatisfaction with our loved ones. When we try to change others according to our own expectations, we may unintentionally create distance rather than understanding. But when we choose to remain silent and offer quiet support, we help them feel respected and trusted. Just as Mr. Andy learned to share his wisdom without dwelling on past failures, Mrs. Amanda chose not to talk too much about minor health issues to avoid worrying her family. And Mr. Robert understood that not every unfulfilled dream needs to be shared. Mrs. Anna also realized that sometimes keeping negative thoughts about a loved one's choices to ourselves helps maintain better family relationships. So, if you feel disappointed because your children or grandchildren are not following the path you envisioned for them, take a moment to pause. Ask yourself, does this truly affect their happiness? Are they content and fulfilled in their lives? If the answer is yes, then perhaps the best thing you can do is support them instead of resisting their choices. Sometimes silence does not mean agreement. It is a way to express trust and respect for our loved ones. Keeping silent about personal asset plans. A lesson from Mr. Tony. Throughout life, we work hard to build a solid financial foundation, not just to support ourselves, but also to provide for our families. As we grow older, many of us feel the need to share our asset plans with our children and grandchildren, hoping they will understand, appreciate, and use what we leave behind wisely. However, the unfortunate reality is that talking too much about inheritance can lead to misunderstandings, unnecessary expectations, and even conflicts within the family. Sometimes keeping silent about wealth and inheritance plans is the best way to maintain harmony and ensure that family relationships remain centered on love rather than material possessions. Let's take a look at the story of Mr. Tony, a wealthy businessman who retired after years of building a successful company. Not only had he accumulated a significant fortune, but he also wanted to leave behind a meaningful legacy for his children and grandchildren. One day, during a family gathering, he decided to share a preliminary outline of his asset plans with his two sons. He believed that doing so would reassure them and provide clarity about what they could expect in the future. However, his sons' reactions were not what he had anticipated. At first, they listened with enthusiasm, but soon the conversation took an unexpected turn. One son suggested that a portion of the assets be invested in a new business venture he was pursuing. The other son voiced concerns about fairness in the distribution among family members. Although Mr. Tony had no intention of changing his plans, after just one discussion, he noticed signs of comparison, debate, and even slight tension between his sons. After reflecting on the conversation, Mr. Tony realized that sharing his asset plans too early could create unnecessary expectations, causing his children to view inheritance as a reward rather than a thoughtful preparation for the future. He did not want his sons to measure family relationships by material wealth, nor did he want them to develop competition or resentment over financial matters. So he decided to take a different approach. Instead of discussing assets, he focused on teaching his children financial management skills, smart investment strategies, and the importance of self-sufficiency. He guided them on budgeting, saving, and most importantly, appreciating the non-material values in life. Whenever the topic of inheritance came up, he simply smiled and said, "What matters most is not how much you will receive, but what you can build with your own abilities." Additionally, Mr. Tony made sure everything was well prepared by working with a lawyer and financial advisor. He created a clear and well-structured will, ensuring a fair distribution of assets without needing to discuss it in advance with his children. This way, he could retain control over his plans while avoiding any unnecessary pressure or conflict within the family. The lesson from Mr. Tony's story is that keeping silent about asset plans is not a sign of secrecy or distrust, but rather a way to protect family unity. When we talk too soon about inheritance, we may unknowingly place an invisible burden on our children. Some may develop unrealistic expectations, others may feel resentment, and some may begin to view family relationships through a financial lens rather than an emotional one. Just as Mr. Andy learned that not every past mistake needs to be shared, Mrs. Amanda chose not to dwell on minor health concerns. Mr. Robert kept his unfulfilled dreams to himself, and Mrs. Anna learned to accept her children without imposing expectations. Mr. Tony realized that silence about wealth is the best way to protect family relationships from unnecessary conflicts. So, if you are considering sharing your asset plans with your family, take a moment to pause and reflect. Is it truly necessary at this moment? Will it bring the family closer, or will it create unnecessary expectations? Sometimes, what we leave behind is not just material wealth, but a legacy of values, independence, and self-respect. Money can be lost, but the lessons and principles we pass down will always remain and be carried forward for generations to come. Conclusion: timely silence is a form of wisdom. Throughout life, we always want to share our experiences, emotions, and lessons with our family. However, as we grow older, we realize that not everything needs to be said. Timely silence is not a sign of distance or secrecy, but rather an expression of wisdom, inner peace, and respect for both ourselves and our loved ones. Looking back at the 5 stories, we see that each character has learned to hold back certain things to protect family relationships. Mr. Andy realized that not every past mistake needs to be shared, as it could change how his grandchildren perceive him. Mrs. Amanda chose not to mention minor health concerns too often to avoid placing unnecessary emotional burdens on her children. Mr. Robert kept his unfulfilled dreams as a private part of his life, rather than making his grandson feel pity or regret. Mrs. Anna discovered that staying silent about her daughter's choices helped maintain a more harmonious relationship. And Mr. Tony understood that keeping his asset plans private helped safeguard family bonds from unnecessary expectations. These stories illustrate that keeping certain things to ourselves does not mean disconnecting from our family. Rather, it is a way to preserve harmony and build healthier relationships. By carefully choosing what to share and what to keep private, we not only protect our own image, but also allow our children and grandchildren to see us in a positive, calm, and respectful light. So before sharing something, ask yourself, is this truly necessary? Will it add value or just create more burden? Sometimes silence is not a lack of communication, but a means to maintain peace, self-respect, and lasting love within the family.